Hello, everyone. I am Nicole, also known as Black TARDIS, and Black TARDIS spills the keys to the TARBIS to talk Doctor Who with members of Black Girls Create community. Doctor Who has a global audience with fans from all over the world, but the fandom still feels overwhelmingly represented by cisgender white males. With the show making efforts to represent a wider range of identities, fandom is facing an important reckoning that's been a long time coming. We've gathered a panel of fans to talk about their experiences in fandom as members of various marginalized communities. Let's go around and have everyone introduce themselves. So I would like you to say your names, your pronouns, and your location and how you're involved with Doctor Who fandom. And we're going in alphabetical order. So let's start with Amanda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda-Rae Prescott, pronouns she, her. I am from Brooklyn, New York, and primarily I interest Doctor Who fandom. I appear on people's podcasts occasionally. I have written 2 articles for Doctor Who magazine, and my main thing is appearing at conventions in America and being a panelist and also a cosplayer.
Thank you, Amanda. Brittany?
You're welcome.
Okay, hi everybody. So my name is Brittany. I am from Chicago, but I live in New York right now. My pronouns are she, her. And with Doctor Who, I mostly just watch it with friends and obviously talk about it with you guys on Black Girl Create. And then more recently, I started doing trivia every month with a group of you guys. So that's pretty entertaining.
Thank you, Brittany. Dominic?
Hello, I'm Dom. My pronouns are he, him, and I live in the UK. So my connection with Doctor Who is I'm mainly a cosplayer, a bit of a writer as well. So I'm associated with a lot of fan projects, fan films, fan audios, etc. But I just mainly like to dress up as the Doctor. Then it's quite a fun pastime, really.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I'm Rebecca. I'm also from the UK. I split my time between Durham and Leeds, depending on whether I'm at uni or not. My pronouns are she, her, and I write about Doctor Who on my blog at rebeccafarren.com through a disability lens, and also write about other disability stuff as well as Doctor Who. And I'm also on the quiz team. I'm really pleased that Brittany mentioned that because it is a really important part of our fandom.
And Sanjay.
Hello, I'm Sanjay Lago. I am based in Scotland in the UK. I'm in Glasgow in lockdown. Yay! My pronouns are he, him. I'm also dyslexic, so I might forget some things or just go on a tangent. But hey ho, that's me. I am involved in Doctor Who I'm an actor. I'm a trained actor, so Doctor Who is what got me into acting. I go to conventions. That's how I met some of you fabulous people at a convention in LA. Yes, I went that far for a convention and not my local. And I also do writing, so I'm currently writing a play where Doctor Who, it's about my life, and Doctor Who is the reason I do what I do. So yeah, that's what I am. Thank you.
Thank you all. Let's get to the questions. Up until recently, the show has been fairly homogenous in terms of on and off screen diversity and representation. So, as fans who might not have been watching the show as a mirror, what drew you to it and what made you become a fan? And I'm going to start with Rebecca.
Oh, okay. Well, I think for me, it was the escapism element. Like, I would say that I started off planning not to watch Doctor Who. Like, I heard all of the news stories about it coming back on the kids' news, and I was like, well, why on earth are they like promoting this show that my parents used to watch back in the 60s? Like, why am I supposed to care about this show? And then the trailer came on, and Christopher Eccleston said, do you want to come with me? Do you want to go on this adventure? And I was like, oh my God, yes, please. Like seeing the inside of the TARDIS and seeing all the excitement and adventure that we could go on. And I was pretty hooked from that point on. So yeah, it was definitely an escapism and an adventure sort of thing for me.
That's amazing. How about you, Amanda?
For me, I didn't discover Doctor Who until I started college in 2007. Classmate was like, "Hey, you like other British things. You're obsessed with House. So why don't you try watching Doctor Who?" And I'm like, "Okay." So we put on Rose, and all of a sudden I was hooked. I didn't consider myself a sci-fi fan until I watched Doctor Who, and then I was like, okay, I like Doctor Who a lot because I was already a huge Anglophile in terms of like other things I watched. Like I love period drama, I love UK crime shows. So Doctor Who is sort of perfect for me in that sense. But I really didn't feel as invested until I saw Martha's season, because finally there was somebody who looked like me and also similar background to me as well. Even though she was British, like she had a more middle class background, which I really identified with in ways that other people didn't, because so much of the representation I felt in America that was aimed at children at that time was a more, it just didn't, I didn't feel represented the way Martha did for me. And like that, she became a mirror and less of a window, if that makes sense.
It does. How about you, Dom?
Well, I kind of got into it just through pure chance, really. I was mainly just wanted to find something new to watch when I was a kid, and all of a sudden you see these adverts for this very exciting looking show on the BBC, and of course I really knew nothing about it back then. I was only 11, I believe, or 10, depending on which side of the birthday, of course. But yeah, I really did not know much about it at all. So when I tuned in, it was just like a whole different world. I mean, it gave me vibes of Star Trek, because I was a massive Trekkie more than anything else at that particular point in my life. But when eventually seeing this new British sci-fi, it was just like, yay, that's cool. Something, yeah. Of course, like Amanda said, I really started getting more into it when Martha's character came along, and I was really like getting properly hooked into that. She's still my favorite companion of the new series for sure.
I love that. Brittany.
So I actually got into the show because of one of my best friends. I was in college too, and she was watching the show. And so I kind of heard about it through her. But I used to be at her house all the time. So one of the many times I was at her house, she put it on for me. And she actually started me with Tenet, but with the beginning of Martha's story, because she's very much cannot stand Rose. So I inherited that. Also, I've never actually watched Rose's seasons, but it drew me in to see, I think, Martha on the show. She became one of my favorite companions. And then at the time, I was still pre-med, so I wanted to be a doctor. And it was cool because Martha was already a doctor and she was just like confident and established. And so that definitely got me hooked on the show.
Okay. And Sanjay.
For me, so my parents knew about the show. They were like, "Oh, it's coming back." But also, when I was at school, I was being bullied quite heavily and quite badly bullied, and I was at the point where I didn't want to be alive. And Doctor Who was kind of like that 45 minutes on a Saturday to just kind of disappear into a new world. And even though it was only like 13 weeks of 45 minutes, it had like a lasting effect. And then when Doctor Who wasn't on the TV, I'd go buy the books, I'd go buy the audiobooks, and that would become my escape. And so Doctor Who kind of became like this remedy to not let bullies get me down. And ever since then, I've just been hooked. And I remember getting my first Doctor Who magazine, and the month when Doctor Who wasn't on TV, that one magazine, I would literally make a month go by till the next one came out. So that's what got me into Doctor Who, was an out to support my mental health with bullies at the time. And also I had my drama teacher who kind of showed me that drama is powerful, and to see a show where you go on adventures, monsters, the stories weave through it, it also helped my passion for drama. So those are the two things that got me into my drama teacher and my love for drama, but also just an escapism to get away from negative energies at school. And yeah, I'm really thankful for it.
Thank you for that. Can you describe a time when your identity led to disagreement with other fans because you saw something problematic in an episode that others didn't? And I'll start with Dom.
So yeah, there was a fairly recentish time that I came under a bit of flack from a particular person in the Doctor Who fandom because of my views on the handling of how the putative Doctor was handled. And of course, I was feeling a bit dejected, and I didn't really appreciate the whole handling of the situation. So essentially, someone who until then I thought I was getting on quite well with suddenly turned around and was like, well, wouldn't it be more grateful if they cast a white actress? And I was like, what? And it was quite heart-wrenching. The person quickly unfollowed me and everything, and I was like, not even going to listen to my point of view? Okay. Needless to say, quite a few people tried to get through to them and explain how this element was a problem and how it was not necessarily incredibly well handled in regards to representation, but they weren't having it really. So yeah, I'd say it became quite a public disagreement, which is not really amazing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. It happens a lot where we just point out something that's very casually like, oh, that's unfortunate, and people don't really have the frame of reference to really understand why it's problematic or why it hurts or why why we're upset about it. And so that's a big part of being online as a fan of color for this fandom in particular. I think Amanda could probably speak a little bit to that as well.
Online, I haven't had as much disagreements publicly with people. For me, more my experience is actually in person when I'm at the conventions and I'm on panels and talking about things. One particularly glaring example for me, I forgot which con it was. It might have been LI Who. It was discussion was about Danny and Clara, and people didn't realize that some of the perceptions of Danny Pink as a character, you don't realize you're thinking about it you're thinking about his character and interaction with the Doctor in a different way, because even though on screen he was probably written as a character who wasn't supposed to be Black, but he's portrayed by a Black person, so sort of like the different dynamics between him and Clara, it just hits differently because a lot of people don't like him because they think he's a bully and stuff, and I'm like, he's not really being a bully. It's called the Doctor and Clara have really bad communication skills, and he's not sure what's going on with the two of them. They're not really telling him the whole truth, so he's kind of defending himself. And also the Doctor's weird thing about how he hates soldiers and stuff, and then at some point Danny gets kind of reduced to tropes, which is problematic, but of course people who are white are not looking at that way. So that panel was kind of interesting. And also I've also had issues on panels when we talk about Bill and the fact that some of Bill's storylines involve violence in a way that white characters haven't suffered, and they don't realize that her being Black and queer has a lot to do with the way when we're watching that have all that trauma happen to her. It's just not the same compared to what other traumas that white characters have gone through.
Yes, I've had these conversations as well. Rebecca, how about you?
I think for me, I probably haven't had as many like disagreements, but that's probably because I'm quite new to like online fandom and like having these conversations. So, and also like I'm not particularly confrontational, so haven't had like necessarily a disagreement where someone's been like, no, that's wrong to me personally. But I think just having a different lens on the show because of my identity as a disabled person has like been quite difficult. Even if you don't have that person, even if someone's not arguing with you, it's still quite difficult to to watch and say everyone say like, oh my god, this is amazing, and you're sat watching it and thinking like, well, I don't think it's amazing because of my experience. So an example I've noticed since I've joined fandom is the perception that I've seen that fandom as a whole seems to think that both series 4 and series 10 are like god tier seasons, where I think that even though there are good things about those seasons, they're 2 of the seasons that I have most problems with in terms of disability representation, and particularly around the Doctor's blindness in series 10, and also the Vault storyline with Missy was something that I found really, really upsetting and painful, and to like not see anyone else online have that experience, even though like I wasn't necessarily being confronted about it, just not seeing anyone have it, that was like quite difficult, because you just feel like you're on your own, and you sort of second guessing yourself, thinking like, is this real, or am I reading this wrong? So yeah, that is another aspect. Like, even if you're not like going toe to toe with people or like getting involved with trolls, like it can still affect you.
Thank you so much for that. That's a valid point. I think we forget sometimes that what you say, even if you're not saying it to somebody, still they're reading it, they still see it. And so there's a lack of conversation happening. Sometimes it also feels like a razor, like, is nobody else even looking into this? Does anybody else even care about this? So I like that you brought that up. Brittany?
For me, honestly, because once my best friend got me into the show, I went back to college, and then I got my college friends into it, and that was it for the majority of my time with Doctor Who. Was like the same, like 7 people watching the show together. Half of them are Black as well, and so I guess in a way I've been kind of fortunate, because outside of that small friend group, until I got to Black Girls Create, I didn't actually know anybody else who watched Doctor Who. So I had nobody else to talk to except for my small friend group. So it's only now that I'm kind of seeing the fandom bigger and maybe interacting with it more so outside of like the 6 or 7 people that I usually watch it with.
And Sanjay?
I've just been making tons of notes because things have been springing. And I think one of the things that I've kind of had disagreements with is Yaz's character. To have like the first South Asian character in Doctor Who, and then she doesn't get proper stories. She kind of is like the side character. Like, there was so much you could have done with her, and I felt the focus was more on. Well, I'm going to get the names wrong. It's not Brian. It is Brian. And Ryan. No, it's Ryan. Oh my god, I've got
Ryan and Graham.
I mean, it's been a long day. I've done 15,000 steps today. And it just really frustrated me to think, finally, young South Asian girls are seeing a South Asian character, the first of its kind, on the show, as she's become a side character. And what I've noticed with a lot of student films I've done, short films, when people write South Asian characters, we're always the secondary character. Even just being a person of colour, we never are like the main role. And I thought, this is brilliant. 3 companions, they'll each get a balanced amount of time. But yeah, I feel like that was just such a waste of a character, because even now going forward, it's not going to be just Yaz and the Doctor. It's Yaz the Doctor and John Bishop being Dan. We don't need a Dan. Why does it always need to be a white man? Give the South Asian women a chance to talk. Give her a space. And then even just thinking about, I've had so many disagreements with friends about that, and they're like, no, but she does get stories. Then after the New Year episode, I remember speaking to a friend, and he was like, oh, she's going to have a happy ending. She is not. Let's be honest. Because Ryan and Graham left alive and well, I have a strong feeling that that'll be another woman of colour that's going to have a sad ending, which makes me sad. The other thing, just going off of Rebecca's point on disability, again, dyspraxia mentioned, dropped in the mix, and then never touched one. Being neurodiverse myself, I'm part of a neurodiverse network in Scotland of artists. dyspraxia is not something that appears and goes away for like 16 episodes. It lives with the person. There's so many things related to dyspraxia, and I've had so many arguments with people that aren't neurodiverse that are like, oh, but at least they mentioned it. At least people are aware of it. Yeah, you mention it, but you don't show it properly. One of my friends, who's also my lecturer, one of the things with dyspraxia is like you drop things. She constantly is dropping things with her dyspraxia. And for me, I'm just like, if you're going to name drop these things in such a big show, you need to be honest and truthful to what it is, and not just like, oh look, we ticked something on our box, yay. And I think that's what annoyed me about like Jodie Whittaker's series. Like the writing was just dropping things but not fully expanding on them. And I think going on back to representation, we've had the first South Asian, we've had the first Black, but the one community that we still don't see on this show is the East Asian community. We don't see them, and there are East Asian actors in the UK. They do exist, but I just feel like, where's the proper representation? I could go on a rant about representation, but those are my points. Just
thank you. You should have been on the representation panel. It's fine. We're gonna do more of these actually, so we're gonna get all those conversations. So I want to know about a time where in person, online, however, you were able to successfully bring someone around to your perspective. Like, do you feel like there was a time you were able to like be seen and heard and actually have your point of view respected? And I will start with Rebecca.
Yeah, definitely. I decided to, because of my feelings about Series 10 and The Vault, and then subsequently my feelings about Series 12 and how that did a lot to make up for what happened in Series 10. I decided that I wanted to write it all down in an essay. And I originally thought, well, no one's going to read it, so I might as well just write what I want. But then I wrote it and I published it, and I was like, oh, no one's going to read it. I'm really sad. So I decided to send it to Joy Piedmont, who is in the BGC community, and also to Caitlin and Brenna, who do the Queer Archive podcast, just to say, like, I really appreciate what you do, and I think you'd maybe like to look at this perspective. So they were all really gracious in saying like, oh yeah, we'd love to read it, and then going on to either talk about it on the podcast or to share it online. So to actually like be able to interact with people that like I know get it, and for them to come back and say, oh yeah, like we'd never thought about that perspective before, but like we see you and we want to share it with everyone else through our platforms as well. That meant so much.
Thank you. Dominic?
Yeah, so I guess it's kind of relating to what I was saying before, in regards to that disagreement which I had in the fandom, in regards to my views on the Fugitive Doctor. I got a little bit irate, so I decided to use the platform that I've built up for, because I do YouTube as well. So I've got a fair amount of subscribers on there. So I decided, you know what, I've got a platform, I might as well use it to actually convey something meaningful, and hope to God that someone actually hope that I don't get thrashed, basically. So I made a video about my full feelings on how Jo Martin's Doctor was utilized in Series 12, and how I don't like that she was basically first Black Doctor, side character, bad, do not like, very, very unhappy about, quite frankly. And yeah, I was astounded at the amount of people who hadn't seen that particular point of view before, but when they listened to how I actually explained it, they were like, oh. And I like to think that I might have been able to sway a few minds over into thinking about how the implications of what Series 12 did weren't necessarily the best way to handle it at any stretch of the imagination. And if I can just put forth that point of view to people and they're willing to listen, of course, there were a few who were like, but the majority of people were very, very understanding and were very receptive to it, which surprised me a lot because I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting like, you know, the traditional blowback or shut up, which is not necessarily it's not the greatest thing to be feeling. It was very nerve-wracking, but I like to think that was an example of me just using what I had to successfully change a few minds, and very happy with how it came out. But I still get people asking me about it these days as well, just to get some further clarification. I'm always happy to explain.
Yeah, I would say that we have a kind of big example of this very recently, which is the Doctor Who Blackout that we did. And that was the Black Girls Create community, and like specifically like Joy Piedmont, you know, Ty Gooden, myself, the entire community. There was going to be the live tweet of, what are the name of the episodes? The season finale, the season 10 finale with Bill.
Wasn't up in time.
And we were just, yeah, and we were just like casually just talking about like that's a choice. That is a choice that they are making to tweet. And it was around the time when like George Floyd was still very fresh. It was a lot of like just really kind of bad energy around, you know, just the fact that Bill is a Black character, and the way that her story ends is very like traumatic, as has been spoken about earlier. And so we were just like, I don't know why they think this is a good idea. Like that is going to be very like upsetting for a lot of people. Like I don't want to wake up and join this tweet and y'all are going to be talking about how great this is, and I'm just sitting here in my shock and in my trauma. So we decided like, oh, let's just have an alternate thing. Like let's just do our own thing, and like people who want to come to our thing, we're going to do it. And so we did it. We played Doctor Who Blackout, and we just like, you know, this is a reason why this episode doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't for me, and I had my mind hasn't changed on it. It doesn't really work as a group watch because there are just two different experiences happening on this episode, which I know because I've been on the internet when people are talking about like what they love about it. And I'm like, you are, you know, missing a lot of like there are a lot of things you are ignoring to enjoy this episode that I can't ignore because it's just a glaring part of the episode for me. And so yeah, we did our Doctor Who Blackout, and it was one of those times when you really kind of see the reality of the fandom, like what they value sometimes. Because I mean, with any fandom, when there are millions of fans, there's always going to be like dissent. There's never going to be a 100% consensus about anything. But it was very kind of jarring how many people were just like, it's my favorite episode. This, you know, and I'm just like, well, you know, I mean, the episode, you can watch it whenever you want to. The comment we're making is that like, is this something we want to share? Do we want to share the experience of this episode, especially in this time when everybody's like, it's a lot of turmoil, there are people marching. You want to share this episode where this Black character gets like brutally killed and then has to have her emotions repressed for like 2 straight hours? I don't know. It was just very weird. But yeah, so that was one of the really big, I would say, like one of those events where I was surprised both by like the blowback, but also really, really taken aback by how many people supported what we were doing. And it was one of those times where like, okay, I feel hurt, and like they changed the official event changed as well, which I thought was good. I mean, I feel like you have to engage with why things are the way they are, and that doesn't necessarily happen. But the fact that somebody was like, okay, enough people care about this for us to like change course, I thought that was really like a positive reflection of like, there are people in this fandom who care, and even if the people who don't care get shouted out, at least we can still like, you know, make a meaningful change, or like at least have people respect our point of view in this fandom. So I believe that that was something that was like one of the things that kept me energized, like keep me like, okay, this fandom sometimes gets on my nerve, but this is one of the things where I'm like, I know there are people out there who really like, who enjoy the show the same way I enjoy the show, but have the same like critical eye toward the show and want it to be better and want it to be something that like in the future, everybody can watch without having to like compartmentalize certain things. So to answer that question for myself. And is there anyone else who feels like that I haven't spoken to that feels like they've been able to successfully, I don't know, change somebody's mind or just, you know, Amanda and then Sanjay.
Okay. For me, at Gallifrey 1, right before lockdown in 2020, I had a presentation on, they have the academic track at Galley. So my TARDIS talk, instead of TED Talk, was about how Black British history connects to Doctor Who. Because there's all the time you get this commentary, like whenever there's a companion color cast, that are like, well, is it really realistic that they were in this time period? And the answer is yes. There is a whole bunch of historians who have figured this out. So I center my talk upon Thin Ice, the Witchfinders, and the Shakespeare Code, because those are 3 episodes where people discuss, you know, their Black companions walking around in spaces that you wouldn't normally expect them in. And I dissected, like, Doctor Who, oddly enough, on all 3 of those episodes was actually historically correct on not just Ryan being in Witchfinders, but Martha being in Shakespeare Code. And actually Shakespeare's depiction of Martha is actually not racist according to the what happened at the time. And I explained that in my speech, and people were just like, wow, man, this is really, really, really good. And even now I still see people clicking on, because I had it as a pin tweet, people are still clicking on the text version of the talk, and I'm like, it was great, because one of my main things in Doctor Who is I love the period set episodes, and explaining the history behind what you're seeing on screen is like my thing, which is what I also did with the Blackout. I just kind of explained the history behind the Witchfinders and the other episodes that were chosen for Blackout. So that was kind of my contribution to it, that's my brand. I'm always the history person. So I'm glad that for once people weren't arguing with me that Black people didn't really exist at that time. Like, yes, they did. And here's a reading list you could take home too. So that was really a great time for me, that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have to say, Amanda, your talk was great. I was there when you did it, and it was my first convention where we had like a seminar, like university, like dissertations. It was great. I think for me, mine is just quite straight up. I remember having an argument with a friend about the racism in Doctor Who, and I just told them, look, you're white. You don't have the lived experience of racism, so you can't really talk about it. Also, if you want to talk about history, like Amanda said, like Witchfinders, like Shakespeare, I remember saying to my friend, go read the history book, a proper one, not the white ones in school. And the nice thing was, my friend couldn't come back at me because he was like, yep, cool, thanks. So I think that's maybe one of my successful moments, just telling a friend, your history is wrong, go read a proper history book. And I just feel really empowered to be like, yeah, you're white, you don't get racism, but go educate yourself. And I think that's what I enjoy about like fandoms and Doctor Who, because even though it's a sci-fi show, there is history attached to it. Like Amanda's talks, like what you said in your talk, it just shows that all these things. So I once asked my agent, can I audition for Outlander? And his point was, sorry, it was a woman. She was like, yeah, but you don't exist in those times, so I can't put you forward for it. And I just feel like saying, I do exist, but I am older now. That was when I was like 21. But yeah, it makes me think that we are a part of history, just people aren't willing to look it up. So I think that's my moment of just telling a friend, read a history book, which I tell everybody now, read a history book.
That's a really great, I love being able to throw that in people's faces sometimes. Like, no, here are facts. I send people to Amanda's work, like, boom, this is real. Like, somebody who knows history has talked about this. There's always resources. So that's a fun thing to be able to do. Like, go read this, go watch this, go do this. Don't just rely on like your school books, which we know are just not expensive. And so that kind of also gives me piggyback off of that. So for those of you who have gone to like conventions or local meetups or any kind of fan congregation events, do you feel like those have been inclusive and welcoming to all people? And if so, an example that you like a positive experience in those spaces, or something that you felt like need to change or that you wish would have been like a better experience? And I will start with Dominic.
Okay, so I mean, my experience with conventions, I've been doing them for a lot of years, so roughly 8 or 9. And in my experience, they've always been very cliquey, I guess. But at the same time, it really depends who you meet up with, because some of Doctor Who fans can be absolutely lovely. I can only speak for the UK scene, of course. But for one thing I've noticed a lot is that it is very, very predominantly white. So when I can clearly remember that I'm very much a standout in a lot of the photos that have been taken with several conglomerations because of the hair, slight complexion, you know. But for sure, it's odd because sometimes you'll hear the odd comment and you're not entirely sure how to take it. And that's been an experience for a very long time. There aren't a lot of there aren't really a lot of people of color in terms of the Doctor Who fandom in the UK, if you break it down to a ratio. But I guess they're as inclusive as they. It's difficult to tell, really. Again, yeah, it really just goes down to one's individual experience, and I can only really speak for myself, and I can say that they were mostly inclusive, but you do have the odd unpleasantries that sometimes occur. But yeah.
And speaking of like the UK conventions, with Rebecca or Sanjay have any thoughts about it?
I think for me, I can, cause like Gallifrey one last year was like my first out of the UK one, which I never thought the first time I'd go to LA would be for a Doctor Who convention. It was something I never thought. So comparing it to the UK, I agree with Dom. They are quite cliquey. Again, I've never actually been to any in England. I've only ever been in Scotland, and the ones in Scotland, they're very old white male heavy, which again feels really cliquey. So if you're like in a talk, or if you're like in a line for a photograph, or you're at a stall, especially at the talks, they all fill the seats at the front. They all run. They get very grumpy if you're sitting in a seat next to someone that they know. So it is very cliquey, and I think it's a very male-heavy convention, white male-heavy, which can feel very uncomfortable when you're like a young Asian boy who's new to this all, and you just love the show and you want to learn. So UK-wise, yeah, they are very cliquey, and you do need to, in my opinion, it's better when you go with someone. And I've always felt more comfortable when I go with a white friend, which is really sad to say, but I feel more comfortable when there's like a white person, because it feels like then, oh, I'm accepted. I'm like the plus one. I feel like then I'm the Yaz of the group, but when actually I'm just the Doctor and my friend's the Yaz. So I think that's how I feel about UK conventions. Whereas coming to LA, I didn't know anybody except my friend Leslie, who I came with, but I instantly was grabbed by joy. Not physically, well, almost. And she paraded me around going, "This is my new best friend. I'm my new best friend." And Joy then introduced me to you, Nicole, and you, Amanda. And I left that convention with more friends than I've ever left a UK convention. And what I think was really nice about Gallifrey 1 is I've never been to a convention where there's breakout rooms for like an LGBT caucus, a women's caucus, a disability caucus, a POC caucus. Like that for me was mind blowing, because I was like, wow, I'm able to find the people and gravitate to who I feel comfortable. And that's where I met most of my friends. And I got taken into someone's hotel room and there was a party, and Joy was like, "Hey, it's my new friend." But I instantly just gravitated to the people of color. I remember just sitting in the corner with Nicole, Ty, and Brianna, and someone just gave me like this weird drink, and I was like, "I do not drink. You can take it back." And I remember I really had to pee, and I got told, "You can't pee in this room. You have to go to the lobby." But that's what I loved about Gallifrey 1. It was more of a family vibe. And the flight back was actually maybe one of the hardest flights because it felt like a community, whereas in the UK, I don't feel we have that here. So thanks, Nicole and Amanda, for making me feel.
It's a funny one for me because oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna say it's a funny one for me because I absolutely love going to conventions. Like I always feel as though there's such like a warm, exciting energy from everyone. And I just really like that vibe. But at the same time, what Dom and Sanjay said is true. They're like incredibly white. And also, for me so far, like I haven't gone to cons to specifically like make friends and talk to people. Like I haven't really interacted with other fans apart from my sister who I've gone with. Like I've only really gone for like the panels or the meet and greets, and I haven't really felt able to make friends, both because of the way that cons are structured. Like you're always running from like one panel to the next, or one meet and greet to the next, and there's not always that space to like rest and to actually make that time to make friends. But then I also haven't really had anyone come up to me and be like, try to make friends with me. Like, so I think it'll be interesting if I do manage to get to Galley next year, which hopefully I will, to see the difference and the more community focused vibes there as well.
Yeah, I hope you can make it. I really want to see everybody. I feel like Sanjay touched on what my experience has been in terms of like meeting people at like Gallifrey one was not my first con, but it was my first like Doctor Who specific con. And previously at other cons, larger conventions, all the Doctor Who programming I would go to, I would be one of very few people of color, Black women. So it was always like you're there, but you're not like included. You know what I mean? And then same thing with Ty and Joy. They're like, this is my friend, and they paraded me around like, this is Black TARDIS, this is Nicole, and it was just like everybody like, oh, okay, I love you, so we're friends now. Like that's what we are now. Got invited to the party, got the Cosmos. like these are things that just happen because you're just around people. And having like a person that has already done the work to make space for themselves and then bring you into the space. And so I think what my experience with Gallifrey one has been, and with like Joy and with Ty, and, you know, with like Deb and like everybody, like it was like I can't even name everybody. It's like 25, 30 people like off the top of my head that were just like everywhere I was, somebody was there, like, okay, I'm here to support Black TARDIS, I'm here to support Nicole. And I was like, wow, this is not my experience in cons, like broad, you know, like I've been to other cons and I've never like you meet people, like you see the one Black person, you're like, we're friends now. But like, it's never like you leave and you feel like, dang, I'm leaving my friends. So I definitely, I have that same experience. Sanjay, it was very similar. So I know like Amanda is like always at the cons, acting out. So like, what about like, what do you think? I'm gonna reframe the question a little bit more. In your experience, what do you think cons are doing right? And then what do you think, or what would you like to see change? Because I think you have enough experience to kind of speak to both of those.
Yeah, for people who don't know, I spent the past, I worked for LI Who from 2013 to 2018, so it's 5 years. So I did that for 5 years before stepping away for personal reasons. And I also did I also volunteered for panels at Regeneration Who, which is also now no longer with us. Yeah, the East Coast Doctor Who cons, money things happened for all of them, and that was before the coronavirus pandemic. And it was weird though, being on the staff side of convention, because I was in charge for LI Who of the cosplay track and later some of the press work as well. It was weird because I would be in a staff meeting and I'm the only Black woman, and many times I'm also the youngest person on staff because I volunteered and I was 23 years old when I started. So imagine this, a 23-year-old walking into a meeting with white men and white women who could easily be my parents' age. It was weird, but good at the same time because they wanted more diversity. But the thing was, it was always an issue of battling the perceptions in fandom. Like I did what I could, but at the same time, I also had responsibilities like making sure, you know, there was things on the schedule for people to attend. So that was sort of, I was kind of wearing the two hats at the same time. And I hope I did. I wanted to do more work, but of course, there's only so much one person can do. It was good to see, though, at my time in LA, who we did have POC meetups, which was great because I mean, I was glad to see that because, like, for first, it wasn't that many people. And, like, as the years went on, there's more and more people who went, which is great for me. But at the same time, it's sort of like, I'm torn because those cons are still, even Galley one, it's still very much a white-centered fandom. But, I mean, I feel like I did what I could, but at the same time, there's so much more to be done. I think just start with some of the other conventions can do is have more POC panelists when it's not diversity related. Like you can have somebody on a panel about David Tennant's era as a doctor who's POC and it's fine. And they'll add perspective to the show that, you know, you wouldn't normally see. I mean, Galley's done a good job at that to an extent, but I feel like that would definitely be one thing I'd do more in the future if I went back to like working on cons, is just making sure that your guests and your scheduling is more racially inclusive in that sense. And it doesn't have to be just talking about diversity, although it is good to talk about those issues, but it's not the only time you can see representation. And also for the perspective, I think the one thing about this time now is that because the internet is free, more people are participating in fandom events. And I think expenses probably keep people away a lot. Because yeah, these conventions are very expensive. I mean, if you think about it, like a room, hotel, and flights and stuff. I mean, even for me, like flying to LA is not that cheap. Even it's you have to factor all those things in with why people don't participate. And cons could use technology in that way as well to expand their audiences.
Go ahead, Sanjay.
I also just wanted to add, like, so when you're at a UK con, and Dominic and Rebecca might agree with us, you don't really get to see the celebrities or the actors. It's very, they're at a time. You want to get a photo, that's your slot. And it's very like, they're a celebrity, you're nothing type thing, it feels sometimes at con. Whereas at Galley, I never thought that I'd be in a bedroom in a hotel speaking to Paul Cornell, like at this party. I never thought that I'd be in a room in a caucus speaking to Vinny Patel, a writer who, as a writer and actor myself, I've looked up to. And I think that's what was also really interesting, is when you meet your group, they introduce you to other people. Like, I never thought I'd have people from Doctor Who on my Facebook that I've been talking to. I never thought that would happen. Like, I was just going to LA, going to go to a convention, go to Universal Studios, get some good Mexican food and come back to the UK. But it was much more of an experience than that. And I think it is thanks to people like yourself, Nicole and Amanda, for being there for me, for making me not feel lost. Because I didn't feel lost. I knew where I was going and there was a lot of help. And I feel that really does lack in UK convention, because I didn't feel like a tick box at Galley one. I didn't feel like, cool, we have the Asian from Scotland tick. It just felt like we were all just Whovians. Whereas in the UK, it's like, cool, coming through the doors, Indian man, cool, can't have another one. Oh, cool, we've got a Chinese woman, can't have another one. And you literally do get followed. I've had that as well at UK cons, when you're at stalls and you get followed around by security, or they just like keep glancing at you. And this was in my very first con, and I met Colin Baker. And I think that kind of put me off cons for a bit. When I was just at a stall, and you just saw a security guard constantly like coming up, follow me as I was going round. In the end, I said to Mum, do I go get a hot dog and leave? And we just left, and I got a good hot dog. But it kind of ruined that experience, because I was like, I'm just looking at books. I'm 18. No, actually, no, I was 16. I ain't a thief. But yeah, I think that's what was missing from the UK ones, a sense of community and support, and not just being a tick box, which I'm just really thankful to all of you guys for being a great support. But yeah.
So Britt, have you been to any kind of fan cons or anything like that?
No, and I was hoping to go. Well, obviously the pandemic, ruined everything, but it wasn't until like I met you guys that I even knew about cons. It's interesting because I've been in New York over 5 years, and I've been in Queens, and I'm guessing Eli, who was in either Long Island City or Long Island. But because I didn't know anybody out here, like I didn't even know about it. But it's something I would love to do. But with you guys, obviously.
So that kind of, yeah. So that brings me to my next question. And I think you've already touched on it a little bit, Sanjay. But so with the pandemic, a lot of people and a lot of organizations have had to go online and have had to take on technology in order to have these kind of events. And I'm wondering what, as a fan, what you feel. Wow, I just straight blank. I'm so sorry about that. I want to know how you feel like that, having to pivot to like technology, like using Zoom and things like this. Do you think that like makes it more inclusive, and does that make you more interested in being involved in like those convention spaces now that there's more accessibility? And I'll start with Brittany because you haven't been to one. Like, how does having access like virtually kind of change your, or does it impact you at all wanting to be involved with like fandom spaces more?
It's been really cool because without all the stuff, like I remember that there was the blackout. That's the tweeting. We watched different episodes, but then we just did that thing when you guys organized that hangout I think it was last month. It was so cool, and I feel like it's so rare that I'm on a Zoom and I feel energized. And that was like one of the few Zoom things I've done in a year where I felt like excited and energized just being with so many different people. And the way that like I said, I really had like the smallest group, and we just stuck to ourselves. Like we didn't really know anybody else. So that was just it. And now to be able to say, okay, I have other friends, or I know people, in other countries too, that I can talk to, other states that are fans and that get it, and we can relate. And I don't know, in a way, like it feels like home to be in those spaces. It's been really cool, and I don't think I would have been able to even experience that if it wasn't online. And I don't know if I ever would have gotten around to like Googling Doctor Who conventions. I probably wouldn't have. So the fact that it's been online has made it so that I could even participate. And it's been really fun, bringing me joy in the chaos of the pandemic, of course.
Yeah, that was the PLC meetup we did about a month ago, and Joy, who was supposed to be our moderator today but isn't feeling well, she and I, like, we all just kind of like, we need that community, we need that coming together that we missed because of the pandemic and like not being able to go to other conventions. So that was actually a really, really like affirming and like positive, like I came away from that feeling just like so great. I was like, yeah, these are my people. And there was people from all over the world, and it was just, again, that was one of those moments where I remember, like, yeah, sometimes this fandom is like you find those pockets of like where you just like, I cannot deal with this, but there is always kind of that, like, you find those people who are like with you, and like you see each other, and like that always makes me feel good about, like, I love this show, but I also love the people that I'm like sharing this experience with. And so I guess I'll also ask like Rebecca, because you have like access to me, it's not just like, is it welcoming, it's nice, but like, is it literally accessible? Can people come to these spaces? Do they feel like they have like are able to traverse these spaces without having to, like, it should be built into these spaces, but a lot of times I feel like it's not. And you have to like demand a certain level of like just being able to get around and just being able to be like seated the right way. Like, so do you feel like being online helps with that? Like, does that make you more able to like connect with people and go to these conventions and, you know, meet other fans?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I consider myself to be quite fortunate in that, like, I have the support and the resources to be able to travel. Like, I was planning on coming to Gali this year, but I know that a lot of disabled people don't necessarily aren't able to travel and to access things, especially like in the UK. Like, a lot of stuff happens in London, so if you can't access London, then you're basically like shut out from a portion of fandom. So for example, the quiz of Rassilon moving online has been like huge for me and my fandom, because I was able to like join with you guys and really like find a community through that. And also like the fact that, like, yeah, we might meet up at Gali like once a year, but like we don't have to do that. Like, we can meet up once a month, and it's become like a regular normal thing. So I just really hope that once the panorama like dissipates and goes away, that like everyone's not in a massive rush to be like, oh yeah, we don't need to do online stuff anymore, we can just like go back to the normal con spaces, because like they weren't accessible for everyone before. So I think event organizers and like fan spaces need to like work out a way of like, yeah, of course we want to get back to those in-person spaces where we can, but also to like recognize the value of the online spaces and keep those spaces accessible for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this final question is, I want everyone to answer. For all of its faults, Doctor Who fandom tend to be a fairly positive space. However, we have some toxic elements of fandom who are loudly opposed to the changes made in the Chibnall era, specifically the inclusion of more women in POC on and off screen. What is the best way to deal with this? Should we deal with it? Should we fight them, or is it best to ignore them? Or summarize, like, how much should we take on the toxic fandom? Like, what is our role? It looks like Sanjay has an answer. So what I'm going to do is I'll start with Sanjay, and then I'll take it to Amanda after, so you have time to prepare your answer. Okay, go ahead, Sanjay.
Take them on. Like, proper, take them on, get your hammers and everything out and take them on. It really annoys me because this show has been dominated by old white men who don't want to let go. And I get it's been a man for all these years, sometimes not even a sexy man, but come on, you need to move with the times. It really annoyed me, like, how angry people got at Jodie. And I was like, she's just an actor trying to do a job. And the amount of abuse she got for playing an alien. It's an alien. I think that's what we need to remember at the end of the day. They ain't real. The Doctor's he's not even a Time Lord. She's not even a Time Lord. We don't even know what she is. But I think also we need to remember that this is a TV show. It's not real life. And let people enjoy it. So I would say take them head on. I've had so many friends, mainly white men, some hot, some not watch Doctor Who anymore. They're boycotting it. And I'm like, but why? And they're like, because they've ruined it. But for something to move on, it needs to evolve. Like, an egg doesn't become an omelette like that. You need to crack that egg, add your spice and your flavors, mix up and put it in the pan for it to become an omelette. You need to, like, sorry for any vegetarians, but if you want a sausage, you've got to make that pig be born, cut it up, and then make it into sausage. You know what I mean? So that's what annoys me, is we need to take them head on and make them see that, one, it's a TV show, and two, it needs to go on. Also, talking about cons, I think online cons are great, but the only one negative I have is how expensive they still make photographs signed by the actors. And, like, I get it in person, you're meeting them, you get to shake their hand and they sign it. But I'm getting an e-picture in my Google email that they've signed online. That ain't a real photo. So yeah, I just don't agree with paying online photo for cons. But yeah, I think we should take people head on. And if we don't see these points go ahead, the show's not going to continue. And then the BBC will be like, cool, people are just arguing, people don't like this, they don't like what the changes are, cancel it. And then we'll have another period, like after 7, waiting for something to happen. And I think that's what I don't want to lose, is that I don't want to be living in that period of not knowing what happens next. So I think we need to take them head on, and we need to keep the show going, because I wouldn't be here today. Like, this one sounds really dark, but like, I would have attempted to kill myself if Doctor Who didn't appear in my life. I wouldn't have met half the friends. I wouldn't have done the acting that I'm doing. So Doctor Who has so many different meanings to a lot of people, and I think it would be a loss if these cranky people that don't like change get their way. So yeah, take them head on. That's my point, and I'll relax.
Amanda.
For me, I think you should take them on, but here's the caveat. Some of the Not My Doctor people on the UK side particularly are very, very, very stalkery and aggressive in that sense. So if they do come into your Twitter mentions or whatever, they get very, very violent very fast. So it's one thing to go back and forth with somebody who mildly disagrees, but if you got those people who are just straight up like gonna start out with racial slurs or whatever, you gotta kind of block them out really quickly and report them, because yeah, they get very, very crazy about that. And also too, a lot of the Not My Doctor stuff into England, it's tied to defunding the BBC for political reasons, because they don't like what news coverage the BBC has been going, and they don't like the entertainment stuff either. So it's sort of like, if you don't confront these people about that's really the reason why, that some of these people themselves are being co-opted by a movement that's like, hey, if the BBC disappears, we're not just going to lose Doctor Who. You're going to lose everything like Fleabag, Small Axe, all the period dramas. We're going to lose all of it if they're not continue to be funded by the British government. So that's my reason why you should take these people on. But of course, if they're getting really violent with you, then you're within your rights, like leave and not engage with them. I do quite a lot of outside Doctor Who fandom work confronting this sort of Black people shouldn't be in our spaces. Like, do that all the time with the period drama fans. And yeah, you know, in the sense, you kind of, they may not see that point of view, but that's where they're headed. And they're being used by people who are thinking about that. So that's something to keep in mind. This Not My Doctor stuff is coming out of a whole movement of people who do not want to see change and representation in media for any marginalized groups, not just people of color. They don't want to see South Asian in the media. They don't want to see LGBTQ in media. They don't want to see any, and they don't want to see Black people in media. They want to see nothing of it. And the thing is, the entertainment industry UK is slowly changing. That's why they're so angry about it. Like, there are more people of color coming behind the camera, not just in front of it. So, and different groups are being represented finally. So that's kind of where this is coming from.
And I'm gonna break in to say that this is where I think having white fan allies is really important. And this is something that happened organically for me, where I would be getting like replies in my comments that are just like, you know what I'm talking about, Amanda, like just not pleasant to read. And I tend to not internalize things like that, but a lot of people don't have that luxury, or just not able to like compartmentalize that. And I've noticed that like I have like friends and fans who will just start combating those replies for me. I don't have to go in, I don't have to say anything. And there's somebody like, as a white man, this is you're still wrong. And I love when that happens without me having to put a call out for it to happen. I like when you see, like, if you're, and this is any type of ally. So like if you're a man and there's a woman and somebody's in her comments constantly, like, as a man, you have a little more authority. Unfortunately, that's how the world works, right? But like when you use that authority to say, okay, you need to get out her mentions, or you're wrong, then that helps her combat it without having to do it herself. Same thing if you're a person of color and somebody's in your mentions having like a white friend come in and say, look, this is wrong. All like there's a lot of intersections of how like where power and where authority is in fandom. But generally, if you're a man and a white man, you have the top, like you're at the top of that hierarchy of people who will be listened to. So I think that's a good place for me to say, like, if you're listening to this and like, that makes me think that you are a person who like cares about like your fellow fans and like your fans of color and other marginalized groups, then that's a good place to use your power in fandom, is to say, okay, well, they're going to keep coming after her because she's a Black woman. They're going to keep coming after her because, you know what I mean? They're going to come after him because he's Indian. They're not going to respect these people's voices. Let me use my voice and let me talk them down, or, you know, like give them, like, let them know that this person has support, that they're not by themselves. And I think that, I mean, in my experience, it helps a lot. A lot of people don't want to fight somebody they feel equal to or underneath, but it's, again, it's all made of hierarchy, but it does exist. So so Dominic, the question, like, should we combat? I mean, I feel like your answer is that you've done it, but like how important do you feel it is that we have these conversations and like combat that type of toxicity?
It's utmost necessary, to be honest, because if you just let them breed, shall we say, they'll just keep on like convincing others to join their cause, shall we say, and it'll just keep on spreading. You need to really stamp it out as soon as you can. And the only way to do that in this online space really is to just combat the prejudice when you really see it. Because otherwise you'll just end up losing the fandom basically to some just a complete mess of like prejudice, racism, etc. And it's just not going to be a fun atmosphere to be around. Like there's so much, especially in the Doctor Who fandom, of the old guard, as Sanjay implied as well. So it's generally the older white guys that are just so opposed to this. And it's crazy because no matter how hard you try, no matter how many stats you bring up, no matter how many facts you'll say, no, it won't change anything, because these people are so stuck in their ways. They won't change their views. They will just keep on doing loop-de-loops around it just to be like, oh, diversity higher. And it's just insane how dedicated these people are to just being outright racist under the guise of not wanting guys of something justified, like defund the BBC or whatever. It's actually insane that these people are just so like full of hate. I can't even say they're deluded, because at this point it's purely calculated. They're calculated. They know what they're doing, and it's just really sad that that a lot of energy in the fandom has to be used fighting, but it is necessary because you can't let them take over. Because again, as you guys are saying, there's been so much abuse towards Jodie just for being like taking over the reins of the show. It's insane. Abuse towards Joe Martin again. But the ultimate thing is these people, some of these people, they just won't change. And the only way to be able to just silence them is to point out how repugnant their views are. And that's all you can really do. And just destroy their echo chamber around them and make sure that they have no one that listens to their inane, stupid ramblings.
Well said. Brittany?
Okay, so my point of view is a little different. And I think because of what I shared, I had, this insulated community, and now I have you guys. So in terms of interacting with racist fans, even interacting with white male fans, it just hasn't been a thing. And so I personally, I'm just like thinking of the energy it takes to like engage in combating. I know personally, like that would be extremely draining for me. And I feel like, I guess each person has to kind of weigh the pros and cons of like, is this a fight I have the energy for, or should I divert it towards something different? I think for me, the way I think about the combating the toxic elements of fandom is the way that we create our own space, the way that we have made, right? Like even this podcast and all the hangouts and then what you guys are already doing at different conventions and things like that, and in your writing and the stuff you share. I think all of that is just resistance in itself, like the fact that we can create spaces for ourselves where we can have fun and we can feel safe and we can have joy, because that belongs to us, right? Like no amount of racist white person, they will continue to hate, but like they can't take that joy from us. I think about when Ruth was revealed as the doctor and just how epic that was to be part of, and to be part of it with specifically like the Black Girls Create community, and everybody is watching that episode in the same day, and all of our reactions. And you know, people can stay mad that she's a doctor, but like they can't take away how powerful it was to see her on screen and then to talk with other people about how amazing she is, and then the possibility of now let's cosplay her and how would that look like, and we got to get the fabric for the shirts. Like all of that stuff is so powerful. So when I think about kind of combating or battling against like the toxic elements, the racism, the sexism, all of those things, I think of just the power in creating our own spaces, continuing to speak our truths, and to have joy that belongs to just us.
Thank you. And Rebecca?
Yeah, I completely agree with Brittany. I think that the fandom as a whole has a responsibility to challenge the toxic elements. And if we can, as marginalized fans, share our experience and point out where things aren't going quite as well, or where things could be improved, or where we feel harmed, or where the show could do better, then that's really good if we can do that. But I feel as though as marginalized or multiply marginalized fans, like we are not obligated to go toe to toe with people who hate us, or people who think we shouldn't exist, or think we shouldn't be in a fandom. It shouldn't be up to us to have this fight and to drain all our energy where other white dudes are just out there thinking like, oh yeah, that's not my problem, that's not my experience, so therefore I don't need to come in and help out. I know there are people that obviously will come and help out, but I think as marginalized people sometimes feel as though it's all on our shoulders to do the work and to make it better. And sometimes taking a step back and saying like, no, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to engage with hateful people, is an act of resistance. And I think it's a really difficult balance to get, but I think it's something that we need to always keep in mind.
Thank you so much for all of your answers. That was, y'all said some things. That's a word. So I want everyone to let everybody know where they can be found. And we'll go in alphabetical order again. So Amanda, let everyone know where they can find you.
I can be found mostly on Twitter at Amanda-Rae Prescott. I couldn't fit my whole name in my Twitter handle. It's very annoying. Help me get a blue check so I can keep talking about Doctor Who and period drama fandom and my writing as well. So all my links are there. I'm still working on my website. I hate getting reminded I need to work on it, but probably now a good time to do that as well. So yeah, Twitter is where I hang out and talk about things all day long.
Brittany?
Okay, well, I mean, if you want to find me, I had to look up what my Twitter was. So it's BRIT, Brit, not Spears 91. If you want to find me, I really only tweet to share like social work stuff or Black Girls Create stuff. But I'm there. At some point, I'm going to have a blog about being Black, Christian, and a social worker. So I guess stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Dominic?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Dominic JGM. That's where I usually post all my sort of random thoughts at 1 a.m. or Doctor Who thoughts. They're two categories I like to split between the two. So yeah, as well as that, I post all my cosplays on Instagram at Dominus of Time.
Rebecca?
Yeah, you can find me at RebeccaFarren.com. I'm also on Twitter at Rebecca_15 and on Instagram at Rebecca Farren.
And finally, Sanjay.
Yeah, me. You think it's like 1 a.m. here and I'm half asleep, but it's only like 7 o'clock. The best place to get me is on Twitter. I am at Sanjay Lago. I just type a lot on there, from acting to Doctor Who to just life. So that's where you'll get me. And I'd love a blue tick, Amanda, but I'd never get one. I'm not famous. But you will. I believe in you.
And I am Nicole. You can find me in Doctor Who fandom at Black TARDIS and on my personal Twitter at Queer Specimen. And I tweet all kinds of things about entertainment and I don't know, everything. So I'll also include everybody's links in the notes. So I just want to thank everybody for joining. This was an amazing conversation. I hope to speak to you again about not diversity. It is on my list of things to do. We're not going to do it anymore. This is it. We've done our diversity talk. Now we're going to talk fun stuff like speculation and just cosplay. So next time, y'all get ready for that. Thank you everyone for joining. Bye.